From above, the ocean looks like a flat, quiet expanse. But drop just inches below those rolling waves, and that silence shatters into a chaotic, densely packed explosion of life. These sunlit coral networks operate as the primary biological engine for the broader ocean. They manufacture the food and build the physical architecture that thousands of interdependent species rely on to survive. Massive filter feeders and apex predators, like manta rays and whale sharks, map their entire existence around these shallow water zones, using the dense nutrient output to feed and navigate across the globe. We spend billions pointing telescopes at empty space, scanning for the slightest hint of alien biology. Meanwhile, we completely ignore the massive, bizarre ecosystems operating right here on Earth. But skimming the sunlit shallows only gives us a fraction of the picture. To understand how the mechanics of our planet actually function, we have to leave the light behind and dive into the crushing darkness. The transition happens fast. Within a few hundred meters, solar light vanishes entirely, the water temperature drops toward freezing, and the physical weight of the ocean above multiplies, creating a pressure environment that would easily crush a standard submarine. Down here in the twilight zone, the ocean slowly swallows human history. Shipwrecks and ancient coral-encrusted city ruins sit quietly in the dark, buried under layers of sediment and time. The biological rules have to shift for anything to survive here. Organisms like deep-sea jellyfish adapt to the intense stillness by abandoning active swimming altogether, opting instead to drift like translucent ghosts in the current. Against this scale, the remnants of human civilization look entirely temporary. The ocean's memory is vast, and its physical depths easily outlast the stone structures we leave behind. In pitch blackness, vision requires a different solution. Deep-sea predators and prey generate their own biological light, bioluminescence, using chemical reactions to flash warnings, attract mates, and lure targets into striking distance. Biology is only half the equation in the abyss. Beneath the crust, underwater volcanoes erupt and vent continuously, acting as hidden geologic engines that physically shape the seafloor. This diagram shows geology driving biology. Without sunlight, organisms rely on chemosynthesis. They convert geothermal heat and toxic vents into biological energy. Zooming out, these thermal vents create dense pockets of life across tectonic ridges, operating independent of the sun. Past these ridges lie the deepest oceanic trenches. With pressures exceeding 8 tons per square inch, these zones remain largely unmapped, representing the last major regions of Earth we have yet to physically reach. The life found in these abyssal trenches builds its biology around the extremes, using the heavy pressure and concentrated minerals as the primary resources for its metabolic machinery. We are finally mapping these incredibly remote zones using advanced sonar arrays deployed from deep-sea research vessels. But the data returning from those arrays reveals a massive anomaly. At the very bottom of the Mariana Trench, thousands of feet below the reach of human divers, cameras are picking up discarded plastic bags and man-made debris. This chart tracks microplastic's vertical trajectory. Surface waste degrades and sinks, raining synthetic particles into the abyss. Oceanic currents and gravity act as a funnel, sweeping and compressing descending particulates tightly into the narrowest, deepest trench valleys. The idea that the deep ocean is untouched is entirely false. Our chemical and physical pollution has actually outpaced our exploration, contaminating the bottom of the planet before we could even send a camera down to see it. Ascending back to the surface, the vibrant shallow reefs we saw earlier hide an equally grim reality. Vast stretches of these once dense ecosystems are rapidly fading to white. This is coral bleaching. It is a direct, severe stress response triggered by the continuous rise in global sea temperatures. This animation demonstrates the biological threshold. If the water temperature spikes by just 1 or 2 degrees, the coral polyps are forced to physically expel their symbiotic, life-giving algae, which ultimately starves the entire reef. Because these reefs act as the foundational architecture for the shallows, their death guarantees a massive chain reaction. If the coral starves, the fish populations that depend on them will vanish, destabilizing the food web for the entire region. Reversing this collapse now requires active, targeted human intervention. Passive observation isn't enough. We have to engineer solutions to keep the reefs alive. Marine scientists and diving teams are executing large-scale coral restoration projects. They manually cultivate heat-resilient coral fragments in underwater nurseries and graft them directly onto dead reefs to rebuild the physical structures. These localized efforts are backed by broader legislative actions, including the aggressive enforcement of marine protected areas and hard legal limits on commercial overfishing to relieve stress on the surviving populations. Ocean life is incredibly resilient. Given a safe environment and a fraction of a chance, new generations of marine animals will continue to scramble across the sand, hit the water, and fight to thrive. We've mapped the deep trenches and identified the specific tipping points of the reefs. The focus must now shift from documenting these systems to physical preservation, ensuring this shallow water engine remains stable enough to support the life that follows.